And it just goes to kind of show that even with our best efforts put out by us meteorologists, the Storm Prediction Center, all of us, that we can still have these events that, that are incredibly devastating and maybe outside of the main focal area. I just wanted to show you what the storm reports look like. Let's blow these up here so we can see this a little bit better. And we had 23 reports of tornadoes on Friday. There were deadly tornadoes down in parts of Oklahoma as well. This was the main corridor we were focusing on, but that supercell, there's actually a couple of them that went right through this area, produced just a tremendous amount of damage. Now, I will link this in the comment section below the video here. This is the National Weather Service's kind of page on what happened there in Lower Michigan and southern Lower Michigan. And the city we're going to look at is Union City, where the tornado's been preliminarily ranked. Actually, I think this is the official ranking here at an EF3 with damage consistent with 160 mile an hour max wind speeds in this. It is important to note that this would be the earliest EF3 tornado in Lower Michigan's history. And when you get to this particular page, there are a lot of things to look at in the tabs below. I'm glad they've already got this produced. This is one of the great assets that we have with the National Weather Service. I did zoom in there on the Union City tornado. It was very brief, 3.7 miles, but it went right over, I probably saw the videos, went over a frozen lake, and as it came into the town, just did a tremendous amount of damage and destruction. You can see some of that if you go to the photos and videos, including some drone video here, as well as just some pictures of the multiple tornadoes that went through this particular area. Okay, so we need to cover that because it's a reminder for me to make sure that I broaden my perspective on the way that these severe weather events could unfold. Now, in terms of total precipitation out of this, just have a look here at the weekend's total moisture, and you start to see the streaky nature showing up. We're going to see a lot more of this as we go into spring versus where we've been in this winter. But some of these locations did put down some locally heavy rain. I am continually concerned about this area right here going into spring. That's just one spot that we're going to have to continue to talk about. But we notice how much farther to the east these storms exploded. And just as a reminder, I know I said it on Friday, but previous forecast model runs for this very active time period to start March had much more moisture getting back farther and farther to the west. And instead, we're seeing a pretty hard line on where we're able to get that moisture to show up. Now, up north, I'm going to come to you in just a few moments. We are not expecting much in California, although there is a nice little cutoff low sitting right here over Southern California, producing some clouds and some showers. But we just need to see how the evolution of this upcoming pattern is going to impact who gets the additional moisture going forward. I did want to bring up, there is a great website where they summarize, let's shrink that up a little bit, there you go. They summarize the entire year's severe weather reports, and we are off kind of to the races here in terms of our severe weather getting into early March. And just to keep all this in perspective, I wanted to show you, here's our annual count of tornado reports, and we're just right here at the beginning of March, and the slope on this line is greatest through the end of March into April, May, and June. And we're right now tracking right on average 101 tornado reports so far in the year, and you can kind of see the previous years here listed. Now, the atmosphere is still doing the same thing we've been discussing. We have our Pacific high off here that is keeping things quite dry across much of the west. We're going to see flowing over the top of this very strong winds. We'll come back to that in a few moments. But our Bermuda high, okay, it's mainly right here, but it extends all the way over to Florida, and we're seeing that flow just continue to transport large amounts of moisture from the Gulf. Now, there is a dry line set up in this, and it's not allowing moisture to get back farther and farther to the west. We may have to wait later into April or May for that to happen. But I bring this up because as we start to look forward, here's today's severe weather risk. And I think mainly this is going to be becoming a hail and possibly straight-line wind risk. I'll show you what some of the models are doing here in a moment. But then tomorrow, on Tuesday the 10th, just a broad area from Texas opening up all the way to Lower Michigan again. And we do see that parts of Missouri, Illinois, a corner of Iowa, and northern Indiana are under an enhanced risk. Now, at this particular point, as we think through this, we're just going to be able to look at some model data. This is tomorrow. We're going to need to do some nowcasting tomorrow to see exactly where these boundaries set up and what they're going to look like. And the point is to show you that this is going to continue toward the east, starting in eastern Texas, getting all the way to Pennsylvania as we get into Wednesday, the 11th. Okay. So right now, if we just look at yesterday's satellite data, we'll just kind of get a feel on the way this pattern is setting up. Just a couple of things to take note of here. Take a look at our little cutoff low that's spinning down here. It's still sitting somewhere in that vicinity this morning. But as I was looking at this, there's three other things I think I want to point out to you. One, we are just a couple of weeks away from when that line, that's our day-night line, will go straight up and down like this. And that will indicate the beginning of the trek of the sun in the northern hemisphere on March 21st. We call that our spring equinox. And it's great. We're just gaining daylight hours in a hurry across the United States. Now, there's, again, several other things to point out. Look at the convection popping here. And then take a look up in Montana. In fact, in Montana, I was watching this pretty carefully the other day. You know that I've been concerned about, let me reload this real quick. You know that I've been concerned about the dryness that's been in places here. And strong winds came through. And can you see the dust blowing there in Montana yesterday? That's a huge area of a dust storm that's going on, blowing soil, dirt, and everything. And this just comes back to a point that a lot of winter we did not keep this area covered in snow. And that's an area that I'm continuing to be worried about as we go forward in terms of spring and early summer drought pressure. One other area to point out, I did just look closely here. This down here in Oklahoma, I was just noticing we did see some more, probably a lot of controlled burns here. But early this morning, we've actually watched some pretty potent storms come through parts of Oklahoma. And right now we do have a severe thunderstorm warning down here at least a stronger storm earlier down here in southern Oklahoma. But our all hazards weather map shows a lot of fog, all right? And then strong winds coming off the mountains. We now have flipped this over to winter weather advisory coming into parts of Montana. And I'll be talking in a few minutes about the chances of snow in through this area. But the concern first is going to be over the winds and severe weather. So let's kind of get into this. I thought that the 0Z HER was well initialized early this morning. And I want to show you, broadly speaking, across the country. We'll zoom in on a couple of areas, what we're expecting today and just early tomorrow. Playing it through this afternoon, this evening, the complex of storms in through here is going to need to be watched. There is rain moving into the northwest, and we can see the cutoff low that is sliding out of the Baja just south of California. But I want to take a closer look at how this evolves here in a few moments and then show you as we go into the overnight hours and get into early Tuesday morning how it's that cutoff low coming through California, which is going to help to aid in the lift of the atmosphere out ahead of opening the Gulf to make this. And you can already start to see that HER is trying to toss out individual cells here. We've got more linear convection farther to the south of it, and this is why we're concerned that Tuesday is going to be our bigger severe weather day this week. Let's go down here and take a look at, let's do the lower Mississippi view. There we go. This is a good view. So watching into Arkansas this morning, watch the storms come out of Oklahoma into Arkansas early this morning, getting to the river maybe by noon. We can see that the models are attempting to keep that large cluster of storms through this evening, pressing into this area with the preceding event being more linear. And there's the possibility of waking the environment up on the backside of this and seeing some single-celled convection on the backside of this. So we cannot rule out later in the day into tonight, more into Mississippi, the risk of those strong to severe storms. And then you'll notice at the very tail end of this, what's coming out, here into southern Texas. Again, this is where our area is going to be of major concern. And I hope we can fill in more of these storms on the backside. We'll see if the HER's got this right. But I'd like to flip this view, given our enhanced risk is a bit farther to the north. Let's go to an Ohio Valley viewpoint here. Let's get this playing. There we go. So there's our storms today going through Mississippi into Alabama. Overnight hours tomorrow. Here we go. This is noon tomorrow, and this will take us right up until the early evening. We just start to see the model throwing out, large, cellular convection. In other words, these are supercells. And this model only runs out 48 hours, so I've got it out there till 7 p.m. on Tuesday. But you can see what we're going to be keeping a close eye on. All right, bigger picture. We just keep coming back to this pattern for the next 15 days. And it has got these 3 ridges that are nearby that we're going to have to watch very carefully. Now, over the top of this, the jet stream flow is going to be very fast. But this ridge that's just occupying so much of the west and opening into the central United States will eventually turn our pattern around to start to drive more colder air back into the northeast while keeping so much of this area very, very warm. What I want to know is, in between, what do we end up squeezing out of this? My first concern is about the winds. So if you just take a look at the maximum wind gusts here over the next, just go out a week. Take a look at this. Off the front range from Montana all the way to Colorado, expecting some really strong winds. And if I just play this out, I mean, let's just do this carefully here. This is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Look at the strength of these winds coming across the northern tier of the United States. I've got gusts in Montana that are 50, 60, 70 miles an hour coming off of the mountains here in Wyoming. Some places going up 85 to 90 miles an hour. And this extends across a broad section of the country, even over to the Great Lakes. And that's just through this upcoming Saturday. Remember last spring, one of the windiest springs we've had in the last 50 years, if not the windiest. And a lot of that came in March and April. And so we're starting to see, again, just a very, very busy March in terms of impactful weather. So please be prepared for this. Now, what's interesting is we're going to follow all this wind with snow on the backside of this. And I'm going to kind of show you where the moisture is going to come from for that. But keep an eye on the overall picture on where the moisture is. So this is a precipitable water animation. And as I play this forward, let's click on that. There we go. We're watching this sector open up here as we go into the day on Tuesday for our risk of severe storms. What I am particularly focusing on initially is the drier air to the north and how far back into Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas we can bring this moisture, because this is a part of the atmosphere that's going to destabilize this week. This is Tuesday afternoon and evening, and that's going to be our main focal point right in through there. There's the boundary, kind of comes through here and then dives south, and inside of that's where we got enough moisture to destabilize the atmosphere and, of course, enough heat. So we go through Wednesday into Thursday, very dry air across the north, but watch, toward the end of the week, we do start to see this kind of plume of moisture coming in through here. And it's going to be hitting more of the northwest, but I'm trying to just figure out where this snow is going to come from and how much we're going to be able to get out of it, because the temperatures are going to drop off relatively significantly as we go farther into the day, let's call it day 7 through 14 time period, or week 2. There's when the real extent of that cold air comes in, and we're out here about March 16th, and you can see how dry the air is going to be with that as well. But in between, I think we're going to put a squeeze on the atmosphere and get something out right in through here. All right, so let's go have a look at that real quick. Total moisture first. This is from the WPC. So there we can see our event that's happening on Tuesday into Wednesday. And then watch. This is Thursday into Friday and into the weekend. See this spreading across this area? Some of this is going to be snow. Now, again, my concern is, where is the back edge of this? We've been extremely dry all winter in parts of Nebraska. Kansas, you're beginning to divide. Wetter east, much drier to the west. Here in the high plains of Colorado, dry too, and we're dry farther to the south. I'm just going to say it again, though. This area, its revival time period for moisture is typically the second half of April all the way through the beginning of June. So we're patiently waiting to see if this is going to fill in, although patience is running pretty thin. We do take note that quite a bit of moisture is coming into the northwest, and I'm going to show you the snow here in just a few seconds. All right, so from here, let's do a quick model comparison. We've got the GFS on the left and the European model on the right. And as we play this forward today, both models are picking up on the severe convection to the south. You can see it's a little different than what you saw in the HRRR. The HRRR being it is a high-resolution model that's capable of discerning convection. But this is getting us through tonight. Now, walking into tomorrow, this is now Tuesday early in the day, about midday here, getting later in the afternoon and the evening. We're going to watch the potential for these storms to blow up on that line we just talked about here. But look at the snow on the back side of this as the next system comes into the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be a pretty rainy and very wet midweek through this corridor. Both models are showing that as the frontal boundary kind of stalls out there. But snow in the Great Lakes into Ontario and Quebec. And then the flow comes back into the northwest over the larger ridge that's living just off the California coast right here. And then even by the end of the week, this is Thursday into Friday, we get our first chances of more snow coming across the northern tier of the United States. So a little clipper sneaks over the top of that broader ridge. That's through Friday morning, okay? We play through the rest of the day. Some of that snow sneaks into the northeast, but then watch the next system coming out on Saturday. Comes over the top of the Rocky Mountains. And just, again, as I mentioned, there's a very good chance that a low tries to form in this area. And we've got cold air on the backside of it. When is this? This is Sunday the 15th. And you can see the snow spreading through parts of the northern plains into the upper Midwest, Great Lakes. And then behind this, large area of high pressure dives in, bringing in much colder air. It's in both models here. and you can see the frontal boundary. It's a little different timing in the models here as we work our way out to next Monday, but there's a system that exits, and that's what I wanted to see in terms of being able to compare them. If we just played this a little farther into Monday and Tuesday, you're now going to see the influence of that ridge. What are we doing again? Clipper time. There it is. We're just going back into that familiar setup, high pressure here, a little clipper on the back side. That's what you see, and that's going to be your main source of moisture. Let's just go over to agweather.com and go to the models. I'm just curious if we can compare pretty quickly here. Let's go to the GFS, and let's just look at total snowfall out of this, okay? So this is the GFS snowfall forecast from that run you just looked at. And I'm just playing through Friday, getting into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So again, we're seeing this corridor open up, big time snow in the northern Cascades and northern Rockies. We need this. And I told you, we just had all that dust blowing around here. Now we're going to put some snow on top of it, and the GFS is quite aggressive in that. Same thing through the Great Lakes states, possibly quite a bit of snow from the GFS. Let's flip this over and look at what the Euro is suggesting in terms of total snowfall here. Oh, sorry, there it is. And play this one out. Similar setup, I think, overall to where the potential for the heavier snow is going to be. Maybe it's just wisest to go look at the the ensemble averages. So this is over the next 6 or 7 days, and we can see the probability of at least 3 inches of snow relatively high through that corridor. We do step this up to 6 inches. There you go. This is the got a new model run in here. Sorry about that. Let's go and play that back out to a week. There you go. Good chance of at least 6 inches of snow in this area. Maybe even more than that if we go up to a foot. Yeah. So Montana, we need to watch you very carefully with this upcoming pattern. All right. The same thing with the Great Lakes in Ontario and into Quebec here. But on the precip side of it, this is the chance it's staying under a half inch. And so we've now bettered our chances through this corridor. But there it is again. That's my main risk area of staying so dry. Now in California, since we're not expecting a miracle March in the presence of that ridge, we're expecting this to be very, very dry. But this is opening up into a lot of the Four Corner states, which continues to put significant pressure on the snow reserves here that will eventually melt and feed into like the Arkansas, the Platte River system, and then of course the Colorado River as it eventually comes down here to the Baja. So that is still top of mind. But on the wetter side of this, I got a model run in again, sorry. Now that we're in daylight saving time, I'm going to have to adjust my, making sure I don't miss that anymore. But this is what we have going over the next 10 days is the probability of an inch of liquid out of this. And if we're looking for the really wet areas, that's the chance at 2 inches. So again, I see a lot of Texas, Oklahoma, eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas getting into this area. Then it kind of stretches, and then you have that second system coming out late this week and then early next week that could hit this region pretty hard. Outside of that, where the ridge is, we're on the edge of it, and you're going to get your heaviest precipitation into coastal Washington, Oregon, and possibly in the northern Rockies here. See, the reason this is so important to me is just over the last few weeks, we have just seen such dry conditions in this area. We've been dry in parts of the southeast. Up here in the Red River Valley, we've been drier as well. And again, that Golden Triangle area, we saw the blowing dust the other day, just another spot that's so very, very dry. And then as you get out there, 10 days from now you see where I started a few minutes ago. Broad ridge opens up. The flow goes over the top of this, dives into the east, and that's going to make things cooler in the east, but very mild and very dry in the west. You just have a big ridge. There's no way this is going to be a big precipitation maker. And sure enough, all of our models are showing the same thing. There's just ridge. See it? What gets me concerned, I'm sorry to just keep beating the same thing here, is that you look over the next 2 weeks, and we just start to see this whole area showing up so dry. The southeast is relatively dry. And of course, California into southern Oregon, the Four Corner states, Intermountain West is dry as this particular pattern just becomes established here into the middle of March. Now, thinking that through, what happens beyond that? So this is a 30-day sliding window according to the European model, okay? This is their extended forecast. So what we've got now is from March 7th to, March 8th to April 7th. And as I just keep sliding this out toward the middle of the month, we just have the same issues going on here. See that? Wetter in through here, wetter in the Great Lakes, wetter in the Northeast, but we have our drier region. And I don't know if this is an initialization bias or if it makes sense with the MJO going to phase 7 and 8. Possibly it could, but the reality is I think we've just got too dominant of a Pacific high that the Bermuda high cannot, push out of the way to bring in moisture into this area just yet. So that's what we're looking at through the middle of April. In fact, if we did a 46-day anomaly map, that's what you see. So that's all the way through April 23rd. So just getting up an idea. Remember, it's just a model, but it's an idea. What I do want to compare that to is my April to June analogs. Now, you saw that this area here was pretty wet in the March to early April forecast. But when you use all of the years that had developing El Niños, we actually tended to open this up in May and June to more open planting windows. And by the way, this just to show you why I think this is important, I've got 2015 in here. If you don't remember, 2015 was like just the mega wet year in this area back in early parts of spring. Now, what I'm going to be watching carefully is you stitch all these tiers together. A lot of Texas, the Red River Valley, the Delta, the Southeast, and even up in Montana, we tended to recover moisture. In fact, 2023 was a year where we planted high pressure here, and all of these areas were very, very wet around it. What I do want to worry about, though, is if we do get into an April, June, where we build a lot of heat into this area, it tends to amplify into June and July down farther to the south over Texas and Oklahoma. And that tends to set us up with a ridge riding setup with summer thunderstorms. That's just one of the things we have to pay attention to. And speaking of temperatures, I mean, just look at how mild of a start to March we've had. For much of the Delta, in fact, a big chunk of the whole southern part of the United States, one of the warmest starts to March on record. Now, we are anticipating a major cool down here that's going to begin in the Canadian Prairie, but it's not now. Excuse me. This is today, Monday, March 9th. That's Tuesday into Wednesday. Look at the heat getting into the northeastern United States. That's been well forecast. But by the time we get into Thursday and Friday, our temperatures here are beginning to change across the northern tier of the United States. Hot south, cold north. And we're going to watch Saturday into Sunday the arrival of some pretty cold air that's going to dive into this area and establish itself over much of the east. When that happens, heat is going to build in a big way in the west where it already is right now. To see how that's going to unfold, I want to show you just the daily temperature anomaly. So this is today, getting into tomorrow going forward. Look at this. We start to see the risk of this cold air diving in as we get out there around the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And as that happens, all the heat builds back in the west, and that much colder air comes diving in here. And you saw in between the chances for snow in this area. So we'll watch that all very carefully. If you'd like to see it on a bit more of a blended view, this is the next 5 days, and then this is day 5 through 10. And I think this has been one of the better temperature forecasts we've seen over the last couple of weeks in terms of consistently getting this pinned down here. So another surge of colder air here. Again, it's past the 14th and 15th, and it's going to last through the middle of the month. But watch, right after it, surge back of warmth just coming back into this area. And a lot of us are questioning maybe when do we just make a full break over into spring-like warmth across the eastern half of the country. And as I look at it, here's the troughs that become established by middle of the month. So that's the cool down that's going to be here. And then right away, starting mid-month, 17th, 18th, a trough begins to redevelop in this area, and that's going to push this ridge feature back into place. So the pattern's open and moving. The temperatures are going to be quite volatile. And speaking of things that are volatile, take a look at this again. This is impressive. This is the beginning of our westerly wind bursts signaling, the development of this El Nino, and the models are just after it, just bringing in stronger winds. And what this is doing, this is having a major effect on ocean temperatures. So I'm going to show you the latest data on the left, and on the right, this is the just 1 week change, and already that warmer water is beginning to show up here. Now, what do we do with this? How do we talk about the way this is all transitioning, and I think what it's going to mean? I will just add to this. Last week we saw the European model's extremely aggressive forecast of El Nino. Take a look at the new NMME forecast of it. Last month they were down here just about a degree above average all the way out to August to October. The ensemble average has now gone higher than that to about 1.5 degrees, and some of the members are up here around 2 degrees. So this is just another way of looking at the potential of this being a strong El Nino event. Now here's what's interesting. You want to see the new April, May, June forecast. I want to remind you that when I show you these, the map I look at, the one in the upper left, is a composite of these 7 forecast models. So you can see all of them here, but what we end up getting out of it is this. And, okay, a wetter signal here, April, May, June. and a bit drier to the north and dry in the northwest. We can also see some risk of being dry in in Florida and then up the East Coast. Now, let's take this and go back to my analogs. All right, there is some similarity. There you go. Just have a close look at this. This is the precipitation composite for April to June. Here's the new April, May, June from the NMME, and here are my analog years. I do see some similarities in this. Maybe a more open spring here, wetter to the south possibly. I mean, that's what we saw in past, wetter down here. What is key, though, is how dry Florida is compared to the analogs. Okay, let's go beyond that. I'm going to show you again. 7 models made this graphic. This is June, July, August. Now, this is fascinating. I don't know why the model's doing this. I don't know if it's trying to split the flow across the country. It's trying to bring in an active western pattern, maybe the early start to the monsoon, and keep it dry in here. And I am baffled. I just saw this morning. I'm a bit baffled by this. I think the maps came out yesterday, but I was driving over to Iowa for about 7 hours last night, so I didn't get a chance to look at it. But I say this fascinating because look at the European model forecast. It's trying to anchor a ridge down here and have just storms running the northern edge of this as it brings in much more warmer air and water into the northeast Pacific. So European model, June, July, August, national multi-model ensemble. Bunch of models running in the US and Canada. Man, those are 2 entirely different scenarios. And this is what I'm telling you. You're going to see these models bounce all over the place going into the rest of spring. We will not fully know what this June, July, August pattern looks like until we get into early June, to be honest with you. So I hate to ask for it, but I'm going to need patience. You want me to swing for the fences? I think there's too much warm water in the forecast in the North Pacific Ocean, which would give a hot, stormy summer and risk of drought in Texas. And that's consistent with El Niños. But I mean, a lot of times you swing for the fences, you strike out. And that's why I'm trying to just be more reserved with this. So again, June, July, August forecast here, that is the new NMME. A lot of diagnosis needs to take place to understand this. Okay. Of course it looks like this because I got to go to Minnesota tomorrow and show these folks these forecasts. Anyways, if I show you the June to August analogs, why did I say that about Texas? Well, we tended to have our greatest heat down here, June to August, with my analog years. And you see how these cooler colors run the edge? Well, if there was hot and dry here, it just tended to give us storms that kind of came over the top like this. You're going, well, I see patches of dryness. And yeah, you might. But I think the greatest consistency is down farther to the south. That's why I made that comment that I would put more of a bet on Texas being hotter, drier, Oklahoma, surrounding states. That's just a thought process for summer. It is not set in stone, but I just want to be transparent with you with what I'm thinking about today. All right. From here, let's just finish this up. I do want to show you a global animation of precipitation over the last week because we need to focus in on how much frequent daily convection we're getting across this part of Brazil. It's had a major impact on harvest and harvest quality of soybeans. And I'm sure you've heard a little bit about it in the news, but I want to point out that over the next week, take a look at this. We are just adding up tremendous amounts of rainfall across this area. And that is going to continue to keep harvest efforts slow, the planting of safrinha crops slow as we start to see precipitation totals in the 5, 8, 9 inches in terms of totals. Farther to the south, we are seeing drier conditions hitting parts of Argentina and parts of southern Brazil. So I do start to think there's a bit of a weather story brewing in South America. We'll just need to see if the quality of the soybeans coming out seems to make any sort of a splash in the markets. We'll just watch for it, okay? That's all I got for you today. Please be safe. We'll talk again tomorrow. Matt will pick this up, and he's going to cover that severe weather for you tomorrow. And I'll see you all on Wednesday. Thanks.